Hello ladies and gentlemen, T1 just lost to KT and I wanted to talk about the implications where we're at with T1 and how of course playoffs is going to look for them in the coming week that has super important games in terms of what their standing will be. So basically, T1 as mentioned, lost against KT. They're currently neck and neck with Hanwha Life for of course the overall points, meaning the series score. The order of everything is what is basically what is going to be the head-to-head that is counted. The match score, the percentage win, and of course 1919. The main thing here is that Hanwha Life don't play Genji again. T1, of course, play against Genji again, and they play against HLE, so they have tougher matches. In terms of what this means, obviously coming into season playoffs, you're going to qualify as a lower seed, meaning seed number 3 gets to play against seed 5, 6. These are the teams that are going to come from, of course, the lower side, maybe Nongshim, because they play against those teams as well in regards to qualify, because you only want 6 teams in the playoffs. There's only 2 more slots. C2, of course, gets a bye. I have to say, historically, getting a bye doesn't necessarily mean like that it's a good thing. Getting that best of 5 out of the way and playing one could be something that is super helpful. You could see T1 against KT, they warmed up when they played, and then against Hanwha Life they played even better, while Hanwha Life of course had a very bad experience in getting, of course, reverse swept. In regards to the dip of performance for T1, I think it's very clear. Even against Nongshim they didn't play that good. Against KT they were very much so underperforming. I think in terms of the concept of how performance kind of works in terms of finding new peaks and new highs, I think conceptually, for most teams, what you're going to see is that this is going to be pretty much time and then performance, meaning the higher up, the higher up the peak. Most teams are going to have a graph that looks like this. The reason for the shape is that you reach your new peak with your good and your bad habits. Sometimes the things that you do that could be bad is what gets you to a certain point, and you need to kind of break down the things that you do in order to kind of find a new peak. And often when you see teams plateauing like that and then getting defeated like Hanwha Life, getting into that dip and finding new strength again, this is where a lot of teams get stuck and fail. Hanwha Life right now is trying to regain their new form because they realized the things that they were doing were not really working, and a lot of the things and the habits that they had become shattered, and they need to kind of be born anew. Something I wanted to highlight in the context of T1, they had a very, very different progress cycle in regards, in comparison to a Genji, in comparison to, of course, all of the other teams that were at MSI and AWC. Of course, G2 was very lucky that they got a break and they got to digest. They are probably one of the few teams that hit the ground running. But if you look at FlyQuest, you look at C9, you look at Anyone's Legend, you look at Bilibili had to change their jungler, right? You have, of course, Genji losing to T1. T1 was the only team that came out of the internationals and actually hit the ground running. And I think that their dip now, if we look at their peak that they found here, I think their dip now is just coming a little bit later than all of the other teams. And I think that's okay. Because T1 plateaued much later than all the other teams. T1 as a team, of course, they were struggling in the regular split in spring. We went from Doran getting solo killed by players like Clear to, of course, dominating Zeus completely and finding absolutely new highs. And I think right now we're in a place where T1 have recognized that their current habits and their current structure is not good enough to beat Genji on a good day. So they are breaking things down and they're trying to find new highs. And this is something that T1 is, of course, masters of. Peaking at the right time. We saw it when, they limped into playoffs and KT picked them to eliminate them early, and then suddenly they did great. They managed to slip by beating BDD and his KT to, of course, qualify to the World Championship, to then dominate at the World Championship. Finding those new peaks is something that they are clearly masters of. But let's define the good and the bad that has put them at their current peak, has put them in a position to be competitive with, of course, Genji and, of course, anyone else in the world. T1 as a team, what they have done super well, I think, is that they have done a great job of integrating everybody. A big question mark was, of course, how are they going to include Doran into the gameplay? Doran was a weak side king for the longest time. Kumayushi is someone that plays to set up carry for success and is super stable throughout the game. And they were missing a carry presence. But I think Doran on the team and this current dynamic of T1 makes team play the biggest center point. I think the biggest way and the most important way they manage to be competitive and even the best team in the world at times is through leaning into comfort. If we take a look at what T1 play, generally they lean into the same champions. Obviously, Kerry as a player that plays a lot of different champs, but in terms of their draft structure, they lean into the same things over and over again, because if you practice the same thing, everyone's playing the same thing, you understand the expectations you can put on your teammates, and at the same time, you can have these performances that are just mind-blowing on certain champions. So T1, you might complain and say, wow, there's certain drafts where I don't understand what T1 is doing at all. There's certain drafts where you're like, what the hell is T1 doing? And it doesn't make sense. That is a part of the magic. They lean into the champions that they play and the champions that they have experience on, because this is how they practice too. And when they try to break from that form and they practice different things, you can clearly see a dip in the performance, because I do think that T1 as a team realized that the draft like this doesn't really work. You know, they went for the Nico, Nocturne, Silas, Jax, and Xayah. These are all champions that they play super much, but Xayah, of course, is a liability against the Corki. The enemy picked more range into the Xayah, made it very predictable. When things hit and T1 Classics kind of set them up for massive success, still T1 playing Ryze and Xayah, Gragas, Aphelios, Thresh, this is still massive comfort for them. And when it hits and it counters what the enemy wants to play, I do think that T1 can be the best team in the world. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. They lean into comfort, find these performances that are absolutely amazing, and they find this team play level that is astonishing, because I do think that T1's team play is better than Gen G's. What Gen G has is that their individual skill is just higher and has more depth in terms of what they can play, whether it's Chovy, whether it's Keen, and whether it's Ruler. They just have such a range of champions that they can perform super high on, like a decent 95%, 97%. But when T1 are playing their comfort in good drafts, they perform like at 100%, and they can blow you out in a way that just looks damn vicious. And this, of course, bled into, of course, week 13. You could see their drafting against Nongshim. I think that their drafting against Nongshim was very rough, especially like you have the situation in game 1 where Poppy is just leaned into. The enemy doesn't have, playing Poppy into Orianna Sivir can be something that's dangerous. But you look at this game and you think to yourself, well, all of these champions are champions that they're used to playing and they are very comfortable on, so you're not too worried. You take a look at game 2, similar fashion. They lean into the Varus Aurora bar, they keep the Aurora flex, Jarvan, and then Ahri comes through, and the enemy has a very well constructed draft to deal with something like Varus, because it becomes, of course, predictable when they lock it in. Varus was a champion that got nerfed on the patch. Finally, T1 managed to win the series with the Z lock-in, which was nice, but even in this moment, that Z gameplay, which was outside of the norm for Owner, was also one of his lowest performances. There was even a clip where Keria said, "You're never playing Z again," because he was just kind of ulting in and getting comboed by Annie, which exposed his team to a lot of risk. So I think T1 is now going through the process of trying to find themselves again and trying to expand their champions, because even though they're playing classics in, of course, the matches, I do think that T1 probably is experimenting a lot in, of course, their scrims, and additionally, I do think that T1 is just hitting kind of a underperformance that some of the other teams have also gone through just a little bit later, because they plateaued a little bit later. So right now we're in a situation where T1 is currently here and they're trying to find their new peak, because this is where they're hopefully going to find a peak where they can beat Gen G. And I think this is something that most teams go through, finding that peak, and then once you kind of plateau and teams catch up to you, you need to break down what you do in order to find new things again. This is something that, as mentioned, most teams go through. In regards to the match against KT, I think it only serves a purpose to really highlight some of the problems. T1, as I mentioned, they are a team that really thrive and really require that high level of execution. They're looking to set up these fights. Simple things where they rely on each other. They kind of want to feel, similar to like a Barcelona, where you want to know without looking where your teammates are. Lucian gets cut off here, the enemy bot lane is 6 and they get collapsed on. KT are the ones to find the fight, and you can see that the coordination just isn't there for T1, the one that we're used to. They take a fight and they get pushed out, and KT are, with the timing of finding a very, very nice peak. While T1 was underperforming, KT at the same time had some of the best individual performances that, BDD deserves from his teammates. So it was nice to see. Later on, these are just T1 classics where they like overload on the side and skip and isolate Gumayusi on the side lane. They're looking to set up the dive on Peter, and even in moments like these, I kind of have the expectation that, they're going to execute the dive beautifully. Whether it's the CC chain that they can pull off, or when they tank, or when Faker ults, this is what I imagine them to do super, super well. Even in this moment, Faker just comboing the Annie to, of course, tank the tower at the same time. This, of course, was very punishing for T1, because in the end, the enemy did Drake, and at the same time, Gumayusi needs to be so careful because he doesn't know where the Wukong is. He gets poked by the Ziggs because he can't play aggressively and dash forward because he doesn't know Wukong information because nobody got spotted. And in the end, Lucian, of course, lost a lot of farm on this. The majority of the game was similar. We saw a lot of individual misplays that are uncommon. Gumayusi dying on a wave like this because he wanted to last hit melee creeps is not something that I kind of expect from him. But at the same time, for T1 enjoyers out there, I wouldn't be so worried. I think this is just a regular cycle of the team. I think the main thing is that the main art to, of course, the game is recognizing how to find your form again. And I think that T1 as a team has done a marvelous job. I think also something that is extremely underrated when it comes to T1 is just how well the coaching staff executed it, because in terms of ramping up for MSI and EWC, they did a fantastic job of integrating Doran, and at the same time, I think the addition of Mata has made Keria and Owner play together at a level that I've never seen them play together at. They played great as individuals always, but I feel like the past T1 alterations were very individualistic. There was pretty much Owner power farming, while Keria took vision on things like Pike and Bard and Rakan to kind of roam and move, or just dominate the 2v2 with a range support together with his boy Gumayusi, which made his gameplay very streamlined and gave Owner a lot of space to, of course, farm. And then you guys remember all of those memes of Zeus and Faker just getting dove and killed on side. That wasn't coincidental, that was by design. The whole game was pretty much them trying to die perfect. If anybody removed nameplates from this, I would imagine this is like Genji beating down on a lower end team. They lost the tier 2 bot while Perfect survived the dive. And in the end, we're going to have this fight on top side that's going to be very decisive for the game. We have this strange Pantheon ult from Owner. And I think for all T1 fans out there that didn't join the fandom this year, know that this is par for the course. This is something that T1 can go through, and I think some T1 fans might even find comfort in the fact that this is happening. As mentioned before, I don't think it's going to impact T1 super much in playoffs. They have Hanwha Life and, of course, Genji to play against, which are going to be super interesting matches, especially the Hanwha Life one, because that's going to be more of an accurate measurement of where they actually are at, because that could be, a potential opponent in, of course, round 2, which is super important. But, of course, everything is double elimination through and through. And sometimes, as I mentioned before, a team, the difference between you jumping from underperformance and finding, a new peak could be a new patch that enables new champions for you. Could be, Peanut finding comfort again, and then suddenly everything else clicks. And Hanwha Life is also battling and raging against this, because obviously they're trying super hard. And you can see, of course, the fatigue on the players and the player cams like Zeus and Viper and so forth. But, the nature of competition is running a race as fast as you can, but you just don't know the distance and you don't know how fast the others are running. There's occasional clashes, but the only thing you can really do is run as fast as humanly possible, and then hope at the end of it all that it was enough and that you had no regrets at all. And that's a beautiful competition in the end, you know, how Life could step up to the plate, T1 could step up to the plate, or even a team like Genji could maybe find a dip in performance, even though it looks very implausible now. So let's see what the future holds. I hope you guys enjoyed a little bit of a different take on this video. I just wanted to mention and talk about the fact that, you know, KT with his monumental victory here, I was super happy to see the fact that BDD, got what he deserved. I think the T1 mechanically just look very, very off, even on things that are supposed to be comfortable. So I think they have a dip in performance. They're trying to find themselves again, and I think that they will probably rise right on time. And the danger is that they won't, but I think you can trust T1 to do so, because they did it already once this year, and I think that they can do it again coming into summer playoffs and ramp up towards, of course, the World Championship. Team fights all went in, of course, the favor of KT. T1's draft doesn't really give a lot of room to do comeback plays. You kind of get out DPS, out damaged, and considering you're also very AP heavy with of course the Braum CC, Galio, and Gwen, makes itemization very punishing, especially if the enemy has the chainland crushers. BDD had a delicious and vicious game, and at least on that front, we're very, very happy to see BDD succeed. At the same time, I have to say that this was one of the best series I've ever seen from Dioktam, and I can say the same from Peter. And I think that Perfect was a little bit wonky in the initial Rumble game, but it was really nice to see, how well he performed and played out the dives when all of the T1 players came for him. Let me know what you guys want to see in the next video. I'll catch you guys on, the next one. All the best to you. Peace.